Acts 23, when Paul was on trial before the Jews, he claimed in his defense, "I've lived before God in all good conscience until this day." And we wonder, how could that be possible? Surely every man has had a bad conscience at some point. In Paul's case, Jesus himself had told Paul on the road to Damascus that you are kicking against the prods of your own conscience. And Jesus urged him to continue, not to continue living such a painful and difficult life. Paul admits he had tortured and murdered Christians, so how can he claim to have a good conscience about his entire life? Was he just exaggerating or conveniently forgetting his past, as people do? I have the same question about King David. He sinned in many ways, not least in the murder of Bathsheba's husband after he'd committed adultery with her. But in his later Psalms, he writes as if he's righteous, and he's in good conscience before God, and he always has been. Again, was he just conveniently forgetting his past? After all, we've met plenty of people who do just that. They just rewrite the narrative of their lives, and the memory of their own past is very selective. Well, David and Paul might have been like that, in which case they're a warning to us never to forget that we are forgiven sinners and have indeed not always lived in good conscience before God. But I suggest we can understand the statements of David and Paul another way. The book of Hebrews speaks of how the conscience is cleansed by the sacrifice of Jesus, by the blood of Jesus. The power of being forgiven by God is very different to our experience of any forgiveness we receive from anybody else. If we sin against someone and they may tell us, "Well, I forgive you," that doesn't actually change anything. We have sinned ultimately against God. But if God forgives us, that forgiveness has a unique power and ought to be the experience of a cleansed conscience. To put it mildly, we feel good about ourselves now because of it, because the past failures, sins, whilst we recognize them, have been dealt with. All guilt is taken away. Jesus was the guilt offering. We are cleansed in every way. This is why receiving forgiveness from God for the sake of the perfect sacrifice of Jesus can lead the most hardened sinner with the most awful biography to truly live without guilt, because Jesus was the guilt offering. We're totally cleansed in a way that only God can do. This, then, is what it means to be a Christian, to be cleansed, to have been forgiven to such an extent that we have no bad conscience. We are free. The sin has been dealt with. The past has been dealt with. We are clean. We're free. And so we have that unique joy, which only true Christians can experience.